revealed how sleeping on a cold floor with a mafia boss's daughter led to an amazing transformation. Jack Malone had never imagined he would find himself sprawled on the cold, grimy floor of a rundown apartment, surrounded by fading remnants of a gritty neighborhood that pulsed with both danger and promise. His evenings were often spent grading endless stacks of papers or wrestling with spiraling debt, but tonight felt different. Hollow. He was a respected high school math teacher in Chicago, yet the weight of an unsupportive administration and an overwhelming financial reality nearly crushed him. His passion for teaching collided violently with the harshness of the education system, which treated students like products to be packaged rather than souls to be shaped. As he stared up at the cracked ceiling, Jack's mind raced. What was he doing here? How did he go from shaping young minds to lying on a floor that smelled of stale cigarettes and forgotten dreams? Then came the revelation. Accommodating Sofia DeLuca, the daughter of a mafia boss. She possessed everything: wealth, influence, a social status that left him feeling insignificant. Yet, beneath her polished exterior lay the same desperation he felt. They engaged in late-night talks that blossomed in the silence. Jack poured out his hopes for his students while she unveiled the chains of expectation clamped around her. But now he faced a moral dilemma, as stark and unforgiving as the concrete streets outside. Should he risk everything they had built by leveraging her family's connections in an educational initiative aimed at helping underserved youth? A sickening wave of desperation coursed through him at the thought. Each dream he had for his students warred against the potential corruption that lay just below the surface, like a lurking beast. He felt like a tightrope walker, inching toward an abyss. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension mounted as Sophia's laughter juxtaposed Jack's tightening chest. How could he grasp at a lifeline if it was tangled in ethical murkiness? His breaths became uneven as he weighed the stakes. The community he had pledged to uplift loomed like a specter in his mind, demanding he stay true to his principles that felt agonizingly distant. The dread of him becoming a pawn in her family's empire twisted into a tight knot in his gut. Just as he dared to fantasize about a future where he could touch lives, disaster struck like a thunderclap. News broke of a corruption scandal directly tied to Sophia's father, threatening to divert all of their dreams into chaos. Should he escape the quagmire by clinging to the hand of a mafia lineage, potentially sacrificing his integrity? Or remain steadfast, battling the encroaching despair alone? He found himself standing on the precipice of a decision that could cost him everything. A choice that wasn't merely black and white, but tainted shades of gray. Would he plunge headlong into darkness or remain shackled by a code that might lead him to ruin? Just when he thought clarity was within reach, a chilling message from Sophia's family arrived, shattering the fragile state they had built. Suddenly the future was more uncertain than ever, and Jack felt his world tipping dangerously into the unknown, his heart racing against the clock of his own conscience. Jack's heart thudded heavily in his chest, his thoughts like rapidly spinning gears as he processed the gravity of the fresh turmoil surrounding him. The message had come in the form of a cryptic text, one that alluded to shaping a new path but layered with threats veiled in temptation. Sudden wealth, resources, and the promise of influence to bolster his educational initiatives loomed before him, but they stood on a foundation of unethical power. For a fleeting moment he felt the allure pull him. He could ignite a spark in the schools, provide those students with the resources they often lacked. His class could turn around. His dreams hovered like butterflies in his mind. And yet the sinister origin of this potential help ensnared him in the trap of moral quandary. Why was he even considering this? Jack paced the small space, its oppressive walls pressing in as if echoing his turmoil. He had devoted years to his profession, to instilling hope and knowledge in young hearts. How could he even entertain the notion of accepting aid that came mired in corruption and crime? That wasn't who he was it? His thoughts drifted to the faces of his students, young minds laden with dreams and aspirations yet shackled by their circumstances. They depended on him, his integrity, his commitment to their future. Each student had stories that haunted him, tales of struggle and perseverance. That connection shot through him, igniting his determination. He could not let them down, not when the stakes felt so high. The tension thickened as he imagined the hallway of his school, its gray walls a stark reminder of the system that often overlooked the vulnerable. He envisioned himself standing in front of those eager young faces, filled with curiosity and potential. One decision could guide them towards a brighter path or plunge them into a deeper abyss, a decision laden with consequences he couldn't ignore. As he sought clarity, Jack reached for the piece of paper next to him, scribbling notes like a lifebuoy in the turbulent sea of his thoughts. He found solace in writing, a means to clear his mind and map the way forward. It was in that moment the phone buzzed again, pulling his attention back to the present. A second, even more disturbing message followed, an explicit warning directed at him. Combining intimidation with an offer of support, it layered the pressure he felt. He realized they wanted him complicit, not as a partner seeking education reform, but as an ally in a scheme that mirrored their own degradation of integrity. Jack's eyes narrowed as he allowed the weight of these revelations to settle. This was a crossroads moment, a definitive turn in his narrative. He could either choose the righteous path, even if it meant wrestling alone against the system, or leverage these connections, jeopardizing everything he believed in for a shot of hope that might come with devastating costs. Fueling a newfound resolve, he turned from despair towards determination. It was time to confront Sophia. Their clandestine meetings had started as exploration of vulnerabilities but had morphed into a broader reflection. They were not just two souls lost in conversation anymore. They were entangled in a larger game, one that required strategy and courage. The time had come to face her, to discover what she truly wanted. Would she back him, or was her family's grip too vicious to loosen? The idea of standing before her, balancing the truth of his conviction against the weight of familial expectation, made his heart race once again. He made a decision. He would confront Sophia, and they would navigate this twisted pathway together, forging clarity amidst the chaos. As he prepared to leave, adrenaline thrummed through him like a drumbeat, urging him to act. With each step toward the door, Jack sensed the impending storm. The lines between right and wrong blurred further. Could he unearth a way to turn this potential disaster into an opportunity without sacrificing his ideals? The unknown awaited him, pulsing with uncertainty, but it also stirred something dormant within, the resolve to reshape his fate. And as he stepped outside, the air thick with tension, he whispered to himself, the time had come to face the untold truths. Jack's pulse quickened as he strode through the chaotic streets, the weight of his decision anchoring to him like a heavy fog. Each step felt far too deliberate, as if his feet were resisting the path he had chosen. It wasn't just about confronting Sophia. It was about standing firm in his convictions in a world where the lines of morality blurred like watercolors on a rainy day. The bustling city around him contrasted sharply with his internal turmoil, vibrant and relentless. Yet it filled him with a sense of isolation. How could he navigate this complexity? The very notion of seeking help from corrupt sources was spiraling into an intriguing debate within his mind. Could one moral compromise perhaps lead to a greater good? Yet each time he tried to rationalize it, doubt crept in with the persistent whispers of his students' expectations. Arriving at the familiar brick building housing Sophia's family's business, he paused to compose himself. His heart raced not simply from anxiety, but from the gravity of the confrontation ahead. He felt the weight of his choices hang heavy, a continuous reminder of what was at stake. He walked inside, greeted by the sterile scent of polished wood and leather. As he made his way deeper into the office, he could see Sophia at her desk, her brow furrowed in concentration, her fingers tapping away on the keyboard. She looked up, her expression transforming into confusion and surprise upon seeing him. "Jack?" she asked, her voice like cool water in a burning desert. "What are you doing here? I need to talk," he said, suddenly aware that every word from this moment onward could build bridges or burn them outright. He locked eyes with her, searching for signs of understanding, for some hint that she was more than a pawn in her family's game. Now, this place. Her eyes darted nervously, as if they were trapped under the same roof as unseen problems. "Yes, now," he replied, firming his resolve. "It can't wait. I need to know if you are willing to help." Her confusion deepened, and he saw her hesitation, caught between her own ties and the stirrings of loyalty she had begun to feel toward him. "Help how?" she asked, a cautious edge carving into her tone. "I'm at a crossroads," Jack said, his voice intensifying as he stepped closer. "I received messages indicating there's a path where I could help my students in significant ways, but at a cost I'm not willing to pay. I'm not willing to sell my soul." He could see the internal struggle in her expression. She was wrestling with her upbringing, the influence of her family, and the sincerity of her own desires. As he laid his heart bare, expecting his words to resonate, he felt an unexpected resolve in her gaze. "What do you mean by that?" "I'm not going to be part of something that undermines the integrity of education. I want you to understand that. But I also need you to tell me where you stand. Are you with me, or are you going to let this cycle of corruption continue?" For a heartbeat, silence enveloped the space, a standoff between hope and reality. Then, a flicker of insight sparked in her eyes. "You think it's that simple? Maybe it should be," he countered, his heart racing as they stood on the threshold of an uncharted boundary. Their shared silence danced between possibilities and fears, raising stakes higher than either had anticipated. He felt the moment deepen, an unspoken agreement hovering in the air, waiting for one of them to break through. Suddenly, the office door swung open and a heavy-set man entered. The air thickened with tension, and Jack's gut twisted as the man's gaze landed on them, a knowing smirk on his face. It was clear he hadn't just walked in by chance. "What's going on here, Sophia?" he asked, his tone dangerously casual, as if probing for secrets hidden beneath the surface. Jack knew this moment could erupt into chaos. The presence of the man shifted everything in an instant. Sophia glanced at Jack, her eyes wide with a mix of urgency and uncertainty. In that instant, they both understood the gravity of their situation. A decision loomed on the horizon, and danger simmered just beneath their casual exchange. As Jack looked back at her, searching for answers, he realized the stakes had been raised significantly. He would need more than conviction. He needed a strategy to navigate this world rife with threats. The moment of truth had arrived too soon, the potential for betrayal deepening the already turbulent waters ahead. Jack was in for a fight, not just for himself, but for every student who depended on him. What choices would he make next, knowing how precarious the foundation of their alliance could be? Uncertainty gnawed at him as the confrontation loomed, and he braced himself for what was to come. Jack's mind raced as he locked eyes with the man now looming in the doorway. He felt the chill of danger slither down his spine, echoing the conflicts that tangled in his gut. Not only did Jack need to maintain his composure for himself, but for Sophia as well. Her future, and the very essence of their alliance, now hung precariously on the outcome of this charged encounter. "Ah, Jack," the man said with a casual menace, stepping further into the room. "I didn't expect to find you here. Seems like you're getting quite comfortable in our world." His thick arms crossed over his chest, displaying a confidence that was both intimidating and unsettling. Jack sensed the undercurrent of threat in his words, a clear warning that he was not just an outsider, but an unwelcome variable to be managed. "Just discussing some educational initiatives with Sophia," Jack replied, forcing a steady tone that belied the turmoil within. Every instinct urged him to retreat, but he refused to give in. He wasn't here to hide or yield, he was here to confront. The stakes were far too high to back down now. Sophia hesitated, fear flashing across her face as she registered the atmosphere shifting in a heartbeat. "We were just brainstorming some ideas for after-school programs," she chipped in, her voice strained, clearly trying to calm the tension. Brainstorming. The man raised an eyebrow, amusement overlapping with a threat. That's an interesting way to put it. He leaned closer to Sophia, the air thick with unspoken intimidation, shifting his attention from Jack to her. You should be careful whose ideas you lend your time to, Sophia. The right connections can make all the difference, or break your world in an instant. Jack could feel his heart pounding, a visceral reminder that this was not the environment for fragility. He couldn't allow fear to dictate their narrative, especially not in front of Sophia. What your family does is wrong, he interjected, his voice steadying with conviction. The way you manipulate power undermines education. It's exploiting potential instead of nurturing it. The man's demeanor shifted as he turned to face Jack fully, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his features. Ah, the teacher thinks he knows something about power. How precious. There was a mocking bite to his words, yet Jack sensed the underlying challenge. Unfazed, he pressed on, fueled by the gravity of his purpose. I'm not precious, I'm resolute. I'm willing to challenge what you stand for. If it takes confronting you here, I'll do it. Each word felt like armor, a protective barrier against the looming threat. He could almost hear the echoes of his students' voices in the back of his mind, fueling his determination. They deserved more than fear or compromise. A murmur of admiration flickered in Sophia's eyes, tinged with apprehension. Jack had crossed into hostile territory, yet he could feel her holding her breath, potentially ready to choose a side. But just as quickly as the air crackled with tension, the man's smile turned into a tight-lipped grimace. Bold words, Jack. But what happens when you realize that power doesn't just come from books and classrooms? Revenge and loyalty bind this world tighter than any lesson you teach. The threat loomed like a shadow, wrapping around the room, pinning Jack against the core of his beliefs. Jack clenched his jaw, aware that negotiating with this man was a web of treachery. Yet a flicker of realization stirred somewhere deep within him. This confrontation was not merely about words, but about something larger, an awakening to the reality that he could summon unexpected strengths from within himself if he dared to face them. The silence that followed felt heavy, weighted by potential consequences and unforeseen alliances. Jack suddenly understood that his choice today could alter the trajectory of not just his fate, but Sophia's as well. Are you ready to step away from this chaos, Sophia? To break free from your family's grasp? He asked earnestly, locking eyes with her. He needed her support now more than ever, for the ethical implications of what lay ahead demanded unity rather than division. Before she could respond, a snarl erupted from the man. You'd better watch how you speak, because there's a limit to where confidence can take you. With that, he spun around, exiting the room with the weight of authority trailing behind him, leaving unease swelling between Jack and Sophia. Jack turned back to Sophia, seeking clarity. We need to decide our next step carefully. Her expression softened, an inner conflict surfacing. What if we bring more people into this? It's too big for just the two of us. Her suggestion unveiled a latent strategy in Jack's mind, but he knew that each new ally could both strengthen their position and introduce vulnerabilities. It's a risk, he replied, a new tension boiling beneath his calm facade. Sometimes risks are the only way forward, she murmured, igniting the flickering flame of hope amidst the turmoil. Jack nodded, determination coursing through him. Whatever lay ahead, the reality of his choices and the sacrifices they required would demand a strength he had only begun to uncover. How could he dare to challenge the very foundations of authority when his own moral compass was so persistently in flux? As they exchanged knowing glances, a flicker of resolve ignited within them both. But with danger still looming, the path they might choose would not come without further tribulation. What showed itself as unity in purpose could easily flip into treachery, setting them on a path where loyalties stretched and alliances could just as swiftly unravel. Jack was ready to confront whatever shadows lay ahead, willing to unveil every facet of himself to stake the fight on what truly mattered. But just how far would he go when it seemed that the tide of corruption stood ready to push back, threatening to drown their fragile hope? Jack's thoughts spiraled into chaos, the confrontation lingering in his mind like a haunting specter. Sophia's hesitance weighed heavily, propelling him into a state of uncertainty regarding his next move. She needed reassurance, but he found himself questioning the very foundation of the strategies he had envisioned. "Let's take some time to strategize," Jack urged, his voice steadier than the storm brewing inside him. The encounter had forced him to confront not only the immediate danger, but also the broader implications of their objectives. "We can't just rush into this, we need allies, but the right ones, people who understand what's at stake." Sophia glanced away, chewing her lip as she processed Jack's words. "Allies come with their own baggage, Jack. How do we know they won't just put us in a tougher position?" He understood her fear. Every friendship had the potential to become a liability. "I know we don't have a crystal ball, but I've taught kids who've been underestimated and have emerged stronger. Maybe we can find people who've also felt the weight of being manipulated, who might turn their pain into power." She considered this, and Jack felt the flicker of hope reignite between them. "You're right about that," Sophia finally conceded. "We need people who are hungry for change, not just for power." The promise of potential partnerships began to tease at his mind. But he wasn't naive enough to believe it would be straightforward. In navigating a landscape rife with corruption, he needed to devise a plan that would not only safeguard what they aimed to achieve, but also protect those they brought into the fold. Every choice now felt as if it were a piece moving on an immensely complicated chessboard. "Let's create a list of people who might be willing to join our cause," he proposed, forcing his racing mind to slow down and think clearly. "Who do we trust? Who has a stake in the fight?" A mental shift began to take place for both of them, a recalibration of purpose and intent. Jack flipped open his laptop, his fingers moving with urgency over the keyboard. They began to brainstorm a wide array of individuals from their lives, former colleagues, progressive parents, even some students they felt could contribute. Each name written down constituted not just a potential ally, but also a testament to their growing resolve. "You know," Sophia began hesitantly, "when you stood up to him, it reminded me of when I first started advocating for changes in the school. It was terrifying, but empowering." Jack paused, curiosity piquing him. "Empowering how?" "I realized I was tired of waiting for someone else to fix things. Just like that moment with your students, I saw the strength in voicing concerns." Her eyes brightened with realization. There was a weight lifting from her shoulders as they began to unearth the power within their own narratives. "That's it," Jack replied, excitement building. "We can leverage that empowerment. Share your story as a counterpoint to everything they believe represents strength. We can flip the narrative." Her enthusiasm surged, evident in the way she straightened her posture and locked eyes with him, a silent acknowledgement of their budding partnership. Jack felt the atmosphere begin to buzz with energy, the fire of their cause blazing a path forward. They were not just standing still, they were transforming, molding frustration into strategy against an oppressive system. Yet as each minute passed, the realization crept in that they were walking a treacherous line. The more they exposed their intentions, the greater the risk of drawing unwanted scrutiny from the very forces they aimed to dismantle. Jack instinctively knew they were entering a volatile phase, and he had to be prepared for it. How do we cultivate these connections while staying hidden from the enemy? He wondered aloud. It's a tightrope we're walking. Sophia focused intently, her mind racing. We can use social media discreetly, create a network that can plan without giving too much away. We've got to be stealthy. If they catch wind of this... She trailed off, her eyes darkening. Then we mobilize. Swiftly and decisively, Jack finished, feeling the familiar resolve snap into place. The important thing was to keep moving, to maintain momentum, undeterred by fear. As they outlined their plan further, Jack felt the true magnitude of what they were attempting to accomplish settling over him. This endeavor would test everything they had. Their resolve, ethics, and courage would be pushed to the brink. What if they retaliate? What if they come for us? Sophia's voice was a soft tremor amidst the growing energy. Jack took a breath, feeling the weight of her question. We prepare for that too. We create contingencies, maybe even a safe place if things go south. Sophia nodded slowly, the beginnings of a strategy blossoming even as unease rippled through the air. Nevertheless, they both understood the urgency of their actions. They had ignited a flame, and extinguishing it now would come with a cost neither was willing to entertain. As Jack looked into Sophia's eyes, he felt the fusion of hope and fear, raw and palpable. They were about to plunge deeper into the murky waters of confrontation, a path rife with moral dilemmas and potential betrayals. The reality of their situation surged through him, its taste both bitter and exhilarating, but with every ounce of uncertainty, Jack knew they were standing at a precipice. The next steps they took could either solidify their alliance or fracture it irrevocably. The moment was drawing near when they would have to face what lay beneath the surface, powers that wouldn't hesitate to manipulate or obliterate. How far would they go to protect themselves and what they believed in? As they continued to piece together their strategy, it dawned on Jack. The greatest challenge wasn't merely confronting the antagonist outside, but also mastering the conflict within. Would he have the strength to not just challenge the authority, but to conquer the doubts that loomed within him? The heavy weight pressed against his chest, but giving in was not an option anymore. Together, they would dismantle the darkness. As long as the flame remained lit, Jack sat back in his chair, processing the urgency of their situation. With every heartbeat, he became increasingly aware of the precariousness of their plan. An endless cycle of thoughts collided, fear of exposure, resolve to collaborate, the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. Yet amidst this turmoil, a burning intuition began to emerge. He needed to step into the specifics of his own development if they would succeed. "What do I truly want from this?" he muttered, more to himself than to Sophia, though she caught his words. He knew this moment of introspection was crucial. If he couldn't articulate his own desires clearly, how could he expect to guide others through the labyrinth they were about to navigate? Sophia noticed his contemplative silence and prompted, "What's going on in your head?" "Failure has always been my biggest fear," Jack admitted, rallying the fragmented thoughts into a cohesive whole. "What if I can't protect you or anyone else? What if I can't achieve what we set out to do?" "That's a legitimate concern. But what if you aren't defined by that fear?" Her ability to help him dismantle his self-imposed limitations galvanized him. "Remember that kid you helped last semester? The one who almost gave up before he realized his potential?" "Yeah," Jack said, recalling how he had nudged that student out of despair into triumph. He found his voice. "Maybe I need to do the same." "Yes, this isn't just about you protecting others. It's about you finding your power in this mess." A spark ignited in Sophia's eyes that mirrored his own emerging conviction. "You have it in you, Jack. You were born to lead." For the first time, Jack allowed himself to entertain the possibility that their journey could catalyze his own transformation. True leadership, he realized, was deeply connected to vulnerability, acknowledging flaws and learning from them, rather than hiding behind a facade of strength. This realization transformed uncertainty into clarity, steadily upgrading his internal dialogue. "What leads the way is not the absence of fear but the presence of courage," he said, nodding. "I need to confront my doubts and use them to fuel what comes next." Each word felt like a battle he was eager to win. A sense of responsibility unfurled alongside this insight. They were eluding oppressive powers, constantly at risk of betrayal, so every action from this point needed to be carefully considered. This isn't just about tactics anymore. It's about authenticity. Authentic connections drive intent, and that will guide us toward the people who believe in change. Sophia adjusted in her seat, her expression more intent than before. "So we align purpose with approach?" "Exactly. If our alliance is forged by sincere intentions, our quest becomes refreshing and illuminating. No more deliberate facades. Let's be transparent about our goals. They can inspire others." His resolve strengthened as he considered the faces of the people they could reach. Those who felt silenced and trapped like the student who defied expectations. They were more than just allies. They couldn't be manipulated. Jack even thought of the misfits and outsiders who had turned adversity into strength. "Let's revisit our list," he said, his fingers brushing the keyboard. "Let's hone it down based on this new philosophy. Who resonates with our mission? It's time to prioritize authenticity over numbers." As their brainstorming session progressed, clarity solidified into actionable plans. Jack felt invigorated by this newfound focus. He was able to let go of a cautious heart and embrace a warrior's spirit, ready to march into uncharted territories. Yet, the deeper they ventured into their strategy, an unsettling sense loomed over Jack. How would he stay true to these ideals under duress? It didn't escape him that many would demand adherence to false appearances or distorted motivations. The thought alone sent a shiver down his spine. Jack knew they had to prepare for the imminent fallout. This will absolutely draw attention. We'll need to develop contingencies for what happens if the pressure mounts. Do you think we should start building relations first? Sophia suggested, her expression steely, the resolve matching his own. Exactly. We start building relationships, not just networks. This is going to require more than strategy. It'll demand wisdom. Inspiration bubbled within him as they shifted from merely tactical discussions to deeper principles they could live by. The weight of their mission regarding identity and vulnerability occupied Jack's mind. The moment was dawning, but Jack understood something crucial. Cultivating genuine connections wouldn't just protect them. It would empower them to resist the inevitable storms that lay ahead. As the night stretched into dawn, Jack's focus sharpened. This wasn't merely a fight for survival. It was a confrontation with the self. Tomorrow he'd agree to reveal his vulnerabilities even further, transforming fear into a resource. Was he prepared to undergo such a transformation? The flickering shadows in the haze of early morning were a physical representation of Jack's inner chaos and emerging strength. The stakes were rising higher, but so was his resolve. There was no retreat, only the fight to forge ahead, and he needed to be ready to claim his place amongst the noise. What awaited him in their next meeting, he wondered. Would he take the first leap into vulnerability, or would fear seize control once more, threatening everything they had built? The sun rose, casting a soft glow through the window, illuminating Jack's face, yet sleep eluded him. He sat at the table, mind racing, the weight of the decisions ahead creeping into his bones. Today, he needed to confront his fears, not just those of failure, but the very real threat that lay beyond their planning sessions. That morning, he felt the dual presence of vulnerability and determination wrestle within him. He understood now that opening up wasn't a sign of weakness. It was an act of courage. Consciously, he chanted a mantra. Courage is the ability to do what you fear. He let it swirl around him, the words becoming an armor, hopeful and resilient. This decision to embrace transparency wouldn't just bolster his own resolve, but would fortify Sophia as well. Together, they could breach the walls of deception that had imprisoned so many. Meeting up with Sophia later felt like standing at the edge of a precipice. The anticipation churned in his stomach, sharp and electric. In the back of his mind, a flicker of doubt nagged at him. Would revealing his insecurities really inspire others? Or would it make him a target, exposing him to manipulations and attacks by those who preyed on weakness? But as he walked into their meeting spot, an unassuming cafe frequented by those in the know, Jack took a deep breath. Each step was a reminder to focus on the impact they could create. He sat across from Sophia, who greeted him with a determined smile. "Ready?" she asked. Jack glanced down at the table as if searching for answers in the wood grain. "I think so. Today, I want to talk about what it means to be vulnerable in front of those we want to lead." His voice wavered slightly, but the intention was clear. He was stepping forward into the unknown. "Vulnerability is scary," Sophia replied, her tone steady. "But it also opens doors to deeper connections. It creates trust." Jack met her gaze, a flicker of excitement igniting within him. "What if we show them our fears first, our doubts?" She nodded thoughtfully. "It might just transform the way they see us. We'd position ourselves not as untouchable but as relatable leaders, people willing to share what's inside." With this concept, the cafe transformed into a sanctuary of exploration. They schemed a plan. They would organize a gathering, not a strategy session tainted with ulterior motives, but a forum to openly discuss struggles and aspirations. Jack envisioned a cocoon of shared experiences, a safe space where barriers could dissolve in the warmth of candid conversations. But then practicality set in. Jack's mind flickered over the risks. What if we're met with skepticism or even hostility? The question hung heavy in the air. Then we engage with it head-on. Remember, authenticity will shine through, Sophia replied, her resolve unwavering. Most people hide their scars. If we embrace ours, maybe others will feel compelled to do the same. His heart raced at the thought of failure, but he also felt a surge of enthusiasm. Authenticity wasn't merely a distant ideal, it was their battle hymn. The notion of coming together to uplift one another sparked an ember of passion in Jack. A new kind of urgency began to form. As they mapped out their plan, he committed to feeling the fears within, acknowledging them and inviting them along for the ride, instead of shoving them into a dark corner of his psyche. Jack could wrestle with his inner doubts even as he sought to uplift others. This was the essence of leadership, vulnerability serving as a bridge, not a blockade. Suddenly, a face from the past invaded his thoughts. The kid he helped last semester whose resilience had inspired him. It dawned on Jack that helping others find strength through shared vulnerability might serve as a reflection of his personal journey. Let's reach out to him, he said, a new plan crystallizing. His story can resonate. It offers proof of what we aspire to create. But just as inspiration surged, the nagging voice of doubt crept in again. What if old wounds were reopened? Were they ready for that? Had he at last truly confronted his own? As he and Sophia continued their strategy lines on paper, a chilling realization washed over him. Their endeavor wouldn't just test their designs, it would ignite their very identities. There was no turning back. Jack had to brace himself, willing to embrace the vulnerability while also setting the stage for the inevitable harsh realities they would face. The stakes were rising, and with them, the promise of personal revelation. But why was he still so hesitant? What pieces of himself remained locked away? Jack had one more thought before leaving. How far could he really go if he didn't fully dive into this new authenticity? As they finalized their plan, Jack sensed the impending clash. Would he falter beneath the pressure, or would he reach the promised transformation? The meeting with the kid loomed next, and the question pulsed. Was he ready to meet the reflection of his vulnerabilities in the raw, open atmosphere they were about to create? The morning light filtered through his window, but Jack felt enveloped in shadows of uncertainty. The impending meeting loomed over him, a heavy weight pressing down on his shoulders. His heart raced at the thought of meeting Brielle, the young man whose life had touched him in unexpected ways. Yet beneath the excitement was a trepidation he couldn't shake off. Would his past actions be enough to convey the sincerity of his intentions? As he dressed, Jack rifled through his wardrobe, seeking something that communicated both professionalism and approachability. It felt paradoxical, him donning an exterior of confidence while internally wrestling with self-doubt. Each article of clothing felt like armor against what lay ahead. Yet the adrenaline coursing through him constricted his focus. The cafe was buzzing with the sounds of morning chatter and clinking cups, an ironic contrast to the storm brewing inside him. As he approached their designated table, Jack's gaze skidded toward the entrance, searching for Brielle. Would he see the resilience he remembered or a shadow of the boy he had once helped? When Brielle finally walked in, a mixture of hope and anxiety washed over Jack. "Hey," he said, attempting a casual tone. "Hey," Brielle replied, flashing a hesitant smile. The confidence Jack once remembered seemed tempered by a lingering wariness, prompting Jack to feel the weight of his own responsibility. They settled into their seats, and the atmosphere between them felt charged, like static before a storm. Jack knew he needed to set the tone for this conversation. "So I've been thinking about how our stories can shape who we are. I want to hear yours." Brielle hesitated, glancing out the window. "My story? It's not really that special." "That's not true." Jack leaned in, sincerity imbuing his words. "Your journey matters. It can inspire others." He saw Brielle's body language relax a fraction. It was a small victory, but Jack knew they weren't there yet. "I remember when we talked last time. You struggled, but you showed strength. That's the real story. Brielle took a deep breath, his eyes dropping to the table. Yeah, I was in a dark place. I felt like nobody cared. But then you helped me. I just don't want to feel like a charity case. Jack's heart sank. He recognized the walls Brielle had built. He was reopening his own old wounds by probing into another's. You weren't a charity case. What I saw was potential. I just hope to pay it forward. It's not just about me helping you, but you being able to share that strength. The moment sat heavy between them like a rock, but Jack pressed on. Emotion and vulnerability build connections. That's what I want to encourage in my work. Facing fears can empower you beyond belief. Brielle's brow furrowed, a flicker of thought dancing behind his eyes. But what if people look at me differently? What if they think I'm weak? Jack felt a deep pang of recognition. He had wrestled with similar fears. Letting others see your struggles doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. It can challenge stereotypes and shift perceptions. Brielle scoffed lightly, but didn't dismiss him outright. Jack seized the opportunity. Sophia and I are planning to create a space for conversations just like this, a place where others can share their battles, their victories, their humanity. What do you think? He watched Brielle's internal conflict unfold. Would he be willing to step into the light? Jack realized this wasn't just about inspiring Brielle. It was about recognizing the strength and vulnerability that lay within himself. Would he allow himself to break through the final barriers he had constructed? Maybe, Brielle replied slowly, uncertainty still clouding his voice. But what if it goes wrong? Jack swallowed a lump of trepidation forming in his throat. We learn. That's part of growth, right? I can't promise it will be perfect, but I think it might just be worth it. A silence enveloped them as Jack considered the gravity of his own words. The stakes were high and the emotional investment could lead to exposure, but he couldn't hide behind fear anymore. He sensed a transformation was brewing, not just for Brielle but within himself as well as soon as he chose to stand unapologetically in his truth. As they wrapped up their discussion, a resolve began to solidify. Jack caught a glimpse of what could be, a myriad of voices intertwined, emerging from echoes of past pain. But another thought whispered in the back of his mind, nudging him toward a deeper confrontation. What if they were not alone in their stories? What if confronting their vulnerabilities together unleashed something truly powerful? A sense of urgency surged within him, igniting curiosity about the potential of their journey. What if the meeting wasn't just a lesson in vulnerability, but also an awakening of courage they hadn't yet imagined? The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but Jack couldn't help but feel the palpable tension of possibility. The moment was coming, a moment where everything could change. Jack left the cafe, the echoes of his conversation with Brielle lingering in his mind like half-formed dreams. The sun had climbed higher, yet doubt still clung to him like an unwelcome shadow. As he walked through the bustling streets, he replayed their dialogue, weighing every word, every gesture, as if they were the pieces of a puzzle that might reveal something vital about himself and Brielle. His professional aspirations to create a space for vulnerable conversations flickered in his thoughts. It was daunting, this idea of entangling lives and narratives while risking exposure of his own raw edges. But as he turned a corner, the sound of laughter pulled him momentarily from his spiraling thoughts. A group of young adults were gathered around a vendor, carefree, embodying everything he perceived he was not. Confident, loud, content. Jack stopped for a moment, the specter of the conversation with Brielle still alive within him. Why was he hesitating to embrace the path he envisioned? It was a simple notion, really, offering a platform for connection through empathy. And yet, the weight of that mission felt monumental, especially when he recalled the fragility in Brielle's voice. Just as he was about to reach for his phone to text Sophia, an unexpected sensation swept through him. Determination began to burgeon within. What if I don't just lead them? He whispered, his own reflection in a shop window staring back, showing a man on the brink of change. What if I walk alongside them? With renewed focus, he turned back toward his office. The once dull corridor now seemed to pulsate with potential. As he settled into his chair, he began sketching out ideas for their initiative, breaking down concepts into manageable steps. What could he offer that would truly resonate? How could he draw out emotions, create a genuine connection, and fuel a movement? An email pinged. It was Sophia. "Hey, can we catch up later? I've been thinking about our project too. Let's brainstorm together." Jack resisted the urge to teeter on his old fear. What if they fail? Instead, a flicker of excitement sparked within him. He composed a reply filled with optimism, catching himself mid-sentence recounting fears he would usually dwell upon. "Let's meet at 5, he typed, then paused and added, "I have some ideas." The next few hours unfolded productively, each task sharpening his focus. As he laid out plans, he found himself imagining their first gathering, how it could evolve from mere ideas into a bustling nucleus of raw vulnerability and hope. Still, as the clock ticked toward 5, he felt that familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. This project mattered. Beyond the logistics, it was about stepping into truth, both his own and those who would come along on this journey. As he walked back to the cafe, Jack couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability lingering in the air. Would he be able to lead without falling apart himself? Would he stand firm as others revealed their truths in front of him? He arrived at the cafe early, pacing the floor as he mentally prepared. When Sophia showed up, the look in her eyes communicated the same mix of eagerness and uncertainty. "Excited?" she asked, taking a seat. "Ready," he replied, and for the first time he didn't feel the need to downplay the intensity of that word. They dove into ideas, and as they sketched out plans, Jack felt courage igniting. There was safety in their shared vision, a fragile yet promising foundation beneath them. He marveled at the unspoken connection growing, bridging the gap between his own fears and their collective aspirations. But as they moved further into their discussion, a shadow loomed once again. Jack's phone buzzed and he saw a message flash across the screen from an unknown number. "We need to talk. It's important." He paused, heart thumping, the air suddenly heavy with the tension of the moment. Who could it be? The unresolved threads of his past began to surface, tinged with anxiety that pulled him back down to a familiar darkness. The weight of what lay ahead made him question everything he had just built with Sophia. Would he confront whatever this message foreshadowed? How could he focus on growth and vulnerability when the past was unraveling in front of him? As he took a deep breath, Jack steeled himself. This was more than just a conversation with Brielle or a new project. It felt like a culmination, a reckoning he had both sought and feared. What awaited him could either derail everything he aimed to achieve or compel him to excavate deeper into his own story. Would he allow the whispers of his past to define him, or could he forge ahead toward the bold transformation that lay in his own embrace of vulnerability? The answer loomed just out of reach as Jack faced the unexpected complicity of his own history. Jack stood at a critical intersection of tension and resolve, both reality and possibility swirling around him like fog. The ominous message from the unknown sender hung heavily on his mind, threatening to unravel everything he had fought so hard to build. Yet within the chaos, an exhilarating truth awakened, one he knew he had to embrace not only for himself, but for the lives he wished to change. Sophia's presence provided a stabilizing force as she leaned closer, noticing his sudden change in demeanor. "What is it?" she asked, concern etching her features. The question snapped him back into the present, forcing him to confront the impending confrontation waiting just on the other side of his phone screen. "I received an unsettling message," he admitted, locking eyes with her. "It feels like a threat, but I can't ignore it." Sophia's concern deepened. "We need to figure out who it's from. It may be related to your push against the system. Whoever sent that text could be testing your resolve." She took a breath, her tone shifting to one of determination. "You can't let them dictate your next move," Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her support bolster his own. It was a reminder that this battle extended beyond his individual fears. It intertwined with their shared mission and the hope of empowering others. The courage to face this threat ignited a spark within him, pushing him past apprehension. "Let's turn this into an opportunity for transparency," he suggested, already feeling inspiration surge. "We can confront this together, while reinforcing our commitment to authenticity. If we can rally support, it may fortify us against any backlash. Sophia's eyes brightened with affirmation, and together they forged a plan. They would focus their upcoming gathering not only on revealing vulnerability, but on creating a university of strength born from adversity. Each shared experience a brick, reinforcing the foundation they sought to build in their community. As the hours drew on, the comfort of their shared purpose eclipsed the uncertainty gnawing at Jack's insides. The cafe was soon transformed into their brainstorming ground, filled with possibilities, and scattered notes captured their evolving vision. Each idea articulated steadily reinforced a sense of trust within themselves and each other, an underlying faith that would serve as their bulwark against intimidation. But as Jack glanced at his phone again, the urgency pressed on him. "We need to invite Brielle to help share the journey," he murmured, his thoughts crystallizing into a definitive focus. "Our stories are interwoven, and inviting him may strengthen his courage while also providing a platform for others." The plan felt restorative, a unity felt through shared narratives as Jack prepared for a revelation concerning his own vulnerabilities. Today was about so much more than just confronting the threats. It was about transforming those fears into acts of bravery that would inspire others to share the weight of their burdens. Soon after, at the planned meeting, a wave of familiarity flooded his senses as Brielle walked through the cafe door. The younger man's face bore flickers of anxiety, yet beneath the surface, there was an undeniable resilience. Jack waved him over, and as Brielle settled into their circle, the conversation began to flow. Jack took a deep breath and forged ahead. "I wanted to talk about how your experiences can influence others and why they matter. We believe that sharing vulnerabilities can ignite change." Brielle hesitated. Jack saw the hesitance, but also a spark of curiosity. "But what if people don't want to hear it?" Jack firmly replied. "Sometimes they need to hear it. When you made the decision to share your struggles with me, it created a connection. You were bold." The dialogue unfolded among them, growing richer as they coaxed Brielle into the transformative dimensions of vulnerability. Jack felt a surge of pride swelling within him as he witnessed the young man begin to articulate his story, his struggles, and the shadows he had battled. "People always seem so perfect," Brielle confessed, a hesitance still haunting his words. I don't want to be judged. You're not perfect, and that's what makes you relatable. By opening up, you give others permission to do the same," Jack responded, feeling the conversation pivot toward a breakthrough. With Sophia at his side, they created a space filled with warmth and encouragement, where Brielle could safely explore his thoughts. As he spoke, a radiance began to unfurl from Brielle. He spoke of hope, resilience, and the fear inherent in being perceived as weak. Jack listened closely, piercing through the noise and doubt circling in the young man's mind and reflecting back the power in his vulnerability. The conversation deepened, and as they materialized a plan together to unveil their initiative, Jack felt a composure solidify within him. With every shared story, he sensed transformations happening, not just for Brielle, but for himself. The impending threat seemed distant now, the community he envisioned growing more vivid with each word spoken. As Brielle opened up further, the flicker of hope blossomed into a flame. Parker's determination shone brightly amidst the gathered energies, becoming a source of illumination reflecting the best of what they were trying to achieve. As they finalized plans for the forum, Jack knew they would inevitably encounter challenges, perhaps betrayals. Yet amidst that uncertainty, he felt anchored by his resolve. The gathering would be their opportunity to inspire others, an emergence from the shadows into the brilliant light of shared truths. In the weeks that followed, the energy of their mission began to build momentum. More individuals reached out, eager to add their voices to the fledgling network that was swiftly taking shape. Each meeting reinforced their pact, a commitment to explore vulnerabilities while amplifying each other's strengths. They faced their fears as unified forces. When the time finally came for the event, Jack stood at the front of a warmly lit room filled with eager faces, people ready to share and listen. A wave of excitement washed over him as he noticed Brielle among the audience, mingling with the nervous souls. coaxing them into honesty, a testament to their joint journey. Jack took a moment to gather himself, the stakes now monumental. His voice rang out as he spoke. This is not merely a platform for sharing anecdotes. It's about creating community, understanding, and deepening connections through our stories. His words echoed, and as the atmosphere filled with warmth, Jack knew he had conquered more than just his fears. He had embraced his vulnerabilities and built a pathway toward authentic connections, laying a foundation upon which they could all grow. This act of embracing vulnerability, devoutly confronting the darkness that had threatened to engulf him, was the culmination of his journey. For Jack, success was no longer merely about personal aspirations or battles. It was about what they could accomplish together, interlinked by the courage to be real. As the first story echoed through the room, he felt a shift, a quiet revelation that he had not only found purpose, he had transformed into the leader he always wanted to be, not from the shadows of anonymity, but in the full glow of truth and connection. Amidst laughter, sharing, and moments of raw honesty, he beamed with pride. He had accomplished what he set out to do, not just for himself but for those who believed in change. The room was alive with resonance. As Jack looked at Brielle and Sophia, he whispered to himself, "I've traded fear for strength. This is my moment." It was the moment that ignited a powerful movement, a union of voices that would continue to uplift, inspire, and echo far beyond the four walls of their gathering. This victory bore witness to a profound change within him, a certainty driven by growth, resilience, and purpose, one that would ripple throughout their lives long after the last story had been shared. Now it was vital to amplify their journey. They needed to nurture this movement. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, and this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.